Hey guys, so I just wanted to show you guys how I do the portraits that I do. So I've started this YouTube channel just to do that. So how I start essentially is I just draw out the outline. As you can see, I'm trying to reference back to the photo and try to get the general angles and just the general shape as to what the face is. I don't start any of the inner details yet. I can add a little bit of shading if I want to, but mainly just getting the outline of the face and maybe the outline of the hairline as well, and the neck and a little bit just to give a general structure before I actually start putting the facial features in. Now what you see me doing here is I'm drawing a line from the center of the forehead down to the middle of the chin. It's just going to give me a bit of structure to the proportions of the face. It helps me out a lot, and it's a good tip if you ever want to try using it. You can always add more lines in as well. Some people like to add a reference line just above the eyebrows and just below the eyes. I don't usually use this strategy, but I tried to map out where they'd be here just to help you guys out a little bit. So once you have the proportion lines and you're happy with those, you can start in with the facial features of the face. I start with the eyebrows and I move down to the eyes, allowing myself to shade in where the shadows would be there, just to help gauge where the eyes are going to be. As you can see, I'm struggling here with getting the proportions right of this eye, and it just doesn't look right. And in this situation, I want to encourage you guys to always follow your instinct. If something doesn't look right with your base proportion sketch, you want to make sure that you're changing it. So I've moved the hair because I realized it wasn't quite right, and it's helped me to get a little bit better and more accurate, and by the end of this, I was a little bit happier with how the eyes looked. As you can see, I allow myself to fill in a little bit of the shadows as I work, and now I'm moving on to the nose. I start with the bulb of the nose because I find that helps me get it in the right position, once again referencing it to your center line. And then I add in the shadows from where the eyes are, usually under bags, and all the way down to the nose. Depending on the lighting, it might be on one side or a little bit on both. Reference that back to your photo and make sure you're always matching that. I've moved down to the mouth, and as I'm working on it, I realized that the chin was not right. There wasn't enough room left, so I've moved the chin. Always feel free to move your face around. If you've realized halfway through that it's not big enough, then just enlarge it. That's why we're drawing with pencil. We've got eraser, and you're allowed to do that. The shadows of the mouth are an interesting thing, because usually I find the center line is where it's darkest, but there's also usually just a little bit of shading just underneath the bottom lip. It's a lot lighter than you realize sometimes, so just be very careful to watch the details of your mouth. If there's a little bit of teeth showing, try to allow room for that, but don't feel necessary to fill in all the details of the teeth until a little bit later. So now I'm just kind of adding a little bit of general shadows in, around the face but also the neck. It's mainly going to be just under the chin. There's going to be a bit of shadows, but reference back to your photo. And yeah, just adding a little bit of shadows in the hair as well. It'll just give a little bit more definition as to when you start doing your smudging. So now we're moving on to smudging. Honestly, this is my favorite part of the drawing because it really transforms it, and it gets rid of all the lines and just makes everything look so much smoother. I use a stump when I'm doing this. You can also use just paper towel or your finger if you don't have a stump. I do recommend getting one though because it allows for a lot more precise shading. Essentially, you're just going to be blending in all the lines that you had, all the shadow marks that you've put in, just kind of blend them all together. Add any more if you need to. If you've got an old stump, it's going to have residue graphite on it anyway, so you can just kind of shade with it without a pencil. But yeah, just add in the shadows and smudge in your shadows just to make everything look a little bit softer. And now I'm grabbing my 6B pencil, just a little bit darker of a graphite pencil, a little bit softer, and it'll allow for darker values. I find this really important for drawings because otherwise it doesn't have any depth. You want to be able to have different values of pencils. I usually start with the hair because I find there's a lot of darker spots on it, a lot of shadows, especially just underneath the chin, as you can see here, but that's also dependent on the photo. So just add in your darker spots with your darker value pencil and we'll go from there. I want to also add with hair, you don't have to be super precise. You want to be getting in your general shadow spots and your general highlight spots, but you don't need to be super nitpicky as to where everything is, because it is just hair, it's not about facial features. Sometimes it kind of flows in different ways. So now I've grabbed my stump, and as you can see here, it's a bit of an older stump. It's got a little bit of graphite already on it. And if you don't have any older stumps, you can always just use a new one, but this will be for darker values, and I've assigned this one to that. So I'm smudging the hair. It's not going to be super precise yet, it's just getting the shadow spots in, and I find it important to smudge and shadow the hair because it makes everything look a little bit softer when you finally do put the fine details in. So now I'm going back to the face with the 6B pencil, just to add in some darker values again, adding where there's a little bit more intense shadows, and filling in the eyes. Usually there's a lot more darker values around the eyes, but you want to be precise with this, so take your time if you have to. And don't forget about the shine mark on the eye, it always adds a little bit of character to the drawing. As you can see, I'm pretty continuously switching between my 6B pencil, my stump, and my eraser. Just playing around with the different things and trying to make sure I'm getting all the highlights and the shadows that I need. It's a back and forth situation, but that's okay. As you can see, I've jumped back to the hair at this point, and I'm adding some more highlights and some more shadows to it. I jump back and forth pretty frequently between the facial features and the hair and the shadows. If you need to take them one at a time, that's alright, but I find it nice to be able to jump back and forth between them because it gives me a little bit of a break from one thing when I get tired of it. And don't forget to add darker values to the shadow spots, the really intense shadow spots, because it really adds depth to your photo. Heading back onto the face again with the 6B pencil, I'm adding darker values to the nose, bridge of the nose, the corner of the eyes, and the cheekbones, because oftentimes those are darker than you'd expect. At this point I'm switching between my pencil and my stump pretty frequently, as you can see. I'm adding the eraser in there some points too. It's just a matter of balance and trying to make it all smooth at the same time of adding the darker values that you need. As you can see now, I'm grabbing my mechanical pencil, which I feel like at one point was a taboo thing for drawing, but I find it really helpful to get those small details in. So I'm adding any little eyelashes or some minute details that there are around the eyes. Oftentimes wrinkle lines are very hard to get with any larger of a pencil. And I'm also adding in fine details of the hair. So once you have the smudge and the shadowing with the hair, you can kind of just add a few lines on top and it's going to make it look really good. And I'm also adding in little details around the face as I go. It's all about those minute details, those small things I'm adding in with the mechanical pencil. I'm just adding in last minute highlights now for anywhere that my hand might have smudged and created darker when I didn't want it to be. I'm erasing those now, and that's pretty much it. Good luck, guys.